Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Varachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Kalachandji Radha Kalachandji Radhe Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Good morning, devotees. I see now whenever I come to class, people are always moving this around. Now I know why. My name is Manjari Gopika Devi Dasi, and today we will be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, verses 9 through 18, and we'll focus on verse 9. Sure. Canto 3, Chapter 26, starting at verse 9, and we'll go to verse 18 and then come back and focus on verse 9. And I ask for your blessings that I may speak something pleasing to my spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada, and to all the devotees. Thank you. So we'll begin by chanting, let's all chant together the invocation prayers. Narayanam namaskritta naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasyam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayesha bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, we'll begin now. Canto 3, chapter 26, verse 9. I'm so grateful to Drishti Yumna Prabhu for always having this on the screen so we can all see so nicely. Could you have the microphone, Prabhu? That's great. So if we could take turns, it's not that many verses, so would you like to begin, Prabhu? We're starting at text 9. We'll read the English.
Devotee said, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and His energies. For both of these are the causes of this manifestation and unmanifestation creation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the unmanifested eternal combination of the three modes is the cause of the manifest state and is called pradhana. It is called prakriti when in the manifested stage of existence.
The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, and the 5 outward organs of action, are known as a pradhan.
There are 5 gross elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, and ether. There are also 5 subtle elements, smell, taste, color, touch, and sound.
Text 13. The senses for acquiring knowledge and the organs for action, number 10, namely the auditory sense, the sense of taste, the tactile sense, the sense of sight, the sense of smell, and the active organs for speaking, working, traveling, generating, and evacuating.
The internal subtle senses are experienced as having 4 aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. Distinction between them can be made only by different functions since they represent different characteristics.
All of these are considered the qualified Brahman. The mixing element, which is known as time, is counted as the 25th element.
The influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is felt in the time factor, which causes fear of death due to the false ego of the deluded soul who has contacted material nature.
My dear mother, O daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, the time factor, as I have explained, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom the creation begins as a result of the agitation of the neutral, unmanifested nature. By exhibiting his potency, the Supreme Personality of Godhead exerts all these different elements, keeping himself within as the Supreme Super Soul and without as time.
Thank you. Now we'll go back to text 9, and I'll chant the Sanskrit. Devahutiruvāca Prakrite Purashasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Sarashatya Yadatmakam. Would anyone like to chant? Devahutir Uvacha Prakrite Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Satashatya Atmakam. Devahutir Uvacha Prakrite Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Sarashatyadatmakam. Devahutir Uvacha Prakritehe Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Satashatyadatmakam. Devahutir Uvacha Prakrite Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Sarashatyadatmakam. Anyone else? Devahutir Uvacha Prakrite Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Sarashatyadatmakam. Devahutir Uvacha Prakrite Purushasyapi Lakshanam Purushottama Bruhi Karanayorasya Sarashatyadatmakam. Translation. We'll do word for word translation. By the way, this is the first time pretty much everybody in the temple chanted the verse. That was so exciting. Word for word translation. Devahuti Uvacha. Devahuti said, Prakrite, of his energies, Purushasya, of the Supreme Person, Api, also, Lakshanam, characteristics, Purusha Uttama, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bruhi, kindly explain, Karanayo, causes, Asya, of this creation, Sat Asat, manifest and unmanifest, Cha, and, Yat Atmakam, consisting of which. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Devahuti said, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies, for both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Prakriti, or material nature, is connected with both the Supreme Lord and the living entities, just as a woman is connected with her husband as a wife and with her children as a mother. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. The relationship of all living entities with material nature has been explained. Now, an understanding of the relationship between material nature and the Supreme Lord is sought by Devahuti. The product of that relationship is stated to be the manifest and unmanifest material world. The unmanifest material world is the subtle Mahatattva, and from that Mahatattva, the material manifestation has emerged. In the Vedic literatures, it is said that by the glance of the Supreme Lord, the total material energy is impregnated, and then everything is born of material nature. It is also confirmed in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that under his glance, Adyakshena, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. It is not that nature works blindly. After understanding the position of the conditioned souls in relation to material nature, Devahuti wanted to know how nature works under the direction of the Lord and what the relationship is between the material nature and the Lord. In other words, she wanted to learn the characteristics of the Supreme Lord in relation to the material nature. The relationship of the living entities with matter and that of the Supreme Lord with matter are certainly not on the same level, although the Mayavadis may interpret it in that way. When it is said that the living entities are bewildered, the Mayavadi philosophers ascribe this bewilderment to the Supreme Lord, but that is not applicable. The Lord is never bewildered. That is the difference between personalists and impersonalists. Devahuti is not unintelligent. She has enough intelligence to understand that the living entities are not on the level of the Supreme Lord. Because the living entities are infinitesimal, they become bewildered or conditioned by material nature. But this does not mean that the Supreme Lord is also conditioned or bewildered. The difference between the conditioned soul and the Lord is that the Lord is the Lord, the master of material nature, and he is therefore not subject to its control. He is controlled neither by spiritual nature nor by material nature. He is the supreme controller himself, and he cannot be compared to the ordinary living entities who are controlled by the laws of material nature. Two words used in this verse are Sat and Asat. The cosmic manifestation is Asat. It does not exist. But the material energy of the Supreme Lord is Sat, or ever existing. Material nature is ever existing in its subtle form as the energy of the Lord, but it sometimes manifests this non-existent or temporarily existent nature, the cosmos. An analogy may be made with the father and mother. The mother and the father exist, but sometimes the mother begets children. Similarly, this cosmic manifestation, which comes from the unmanifest material nature of the Supreme Lord, sometimes appears and again disappears. But the material nature is ever existing, and the Supreme Lord is the supreme cause for both the subtle and gross manifestations of this material world. Such an amazing purport. Kind of just want to drop the mic and walk away. But I'll try to speak something. So this chapter is entitled The Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. And in it, Kapila is describing the different categories of the absolute truth, because knowing these, a person can be freed from the contaminations of the modes of material nature. Kapila goes on to explain that transcendental knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. So what do you think is the definition of transcendental knowledge. Knowledge is to know something. So what is transcendental knowledge? Knowledge to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's a good answer. Knowledge beyond the material knowledge. I like these answers. I have heard it explained, transcendental knowledge, on the same platform of what you both said, is understanding matter, spirit, and the controller of both. So why does Kapila state that by acquiring this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, why is it that by acquiring this, the knot of attachment to the material world is cut? Because if we understand matter, spirit, and controller of both, transcendental knowledge, by acquiring this understanding, we can come to the understanding that the body and the world we live in is temporary, and that I don't belong here. I belong to the eternal. All the religions of the world agree on this one point. This world is temporary, and there is a spiritual world that I need to get to. I need to go there. That's where I actually belong, and that's where I'm going to live for eternity, because I'm eternal. All religions agree on this point. And that's why this knowledge is important, and it's given in all the scriptures, so that we all make the attempt to get out of this material world. The Lord Kapila is saying that material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life. This conditioning is acquired through interactions with the subtle modes of material nature. In text 9, Devahuti asks, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme and his energies. For both of these are the causes for the manifest, which is cosmos, this material world, prakriti, and unmanifest creation, which is pradhan. 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. 5 subtle, smell, taste, color, touch, sound. 4 internal senses, mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. 5 senses for gathering knowledge, touch, ears, tongue, eyes, nose. 5 working senses, hands, legs, genitals, mouth, evacuating organs. All 24 of these elements are known as pradhan. And the 25th element is time. The analogy is given that when you're cooking, you put the 5 basic ingredients in first. And the 5 ingredients are the 5 elements. You put in the first 5 ingredients. And the fire is time. And then you put in 5 more elements. The product made manifest of this is prakriti. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, time I am. Just like without fire, cooking is not possible, similarly without time, prakriti is not possible out of pradhan. The Prabhupada states in this purport, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. Does anyone know the verse that Prabhupada is referring to? Yes, he says, the Lord says he impregnates Mother Nature with children, living entities, and thereafter all species of living entities become manifest. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, verse 4. Sarvayoneshu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bij pradapita. The translation is, it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, and that I am the seed-giving Father. This point is so important that Prabhupada gives 3 references for this one fact in this purport. So that's the first reference. He also quotes the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he says, under his glance, adyakshena, under his direction and by his will, nature is working. Does anyone know this verse? I know besides him. It's probably a commonly memorized one. Yes, the 10th verse from chapter 9. Madhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. Just Yumna Prabhu also knew it. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. In the purport of this Bhagavad Gita verse, Gita 9:10, Prabhupada explains the father gives seeds to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly, the Supreme Lord, by his mere glance, injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species, according to their last desires and activities. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated, and everything is created immediately. So in the purport of today's verse, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Verse 9, there is a Vedic aphorism used by Prabhupada in the purport. He says the Supreme Lord glances over material nature, and this aphorism is known as Sai Akshata. He glanced. Another important portion of the purport is, I believe towards the end, Prabhupada states 2 words used in this verse are sat and asat. The cosmic manifestation is asat. It does not exist. But the material nature of the Supreme Lord is sat, or ever existing. So Mayavadis misinterpret this principle through their most famous aphorism, Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya. And here they explain only a partial truth, which is Brahman is Satya eternal. That's true. That's been explained here by Prabhupada as material energy, the subtle pradhan being ever existing in the subtle form. The problem in Brahma Satya Jagan Mitya is Jagat. The manifested Prakriti form they explain as illusory, which is not true. Why? Prabhupada explains it is not illusory, it is temporary. Asat. Prabhupada also gives an analogy to explain this further, that of the father and mother. The mother and father exist, but sometimes the mother begets children. In essence, Kapila Dev is answering Devahuti's question by explaining how the Supreme Lord is the cause, maintainer, and controller of both subtle and gross material energies, which is pradhan and prakriti, respectively. One may wonder, what does a devotee have to do with understanding the manifest and unmanifest world, the 24 elements, and time, and why is Devotee even asking this question? Because if we read Bhagavad Gita, the whole message of Bhagavad Gita is bhakti, devotional service, surrender unto me. And we have all, nectar of instruction, how we should act in the world. And there's so many other things to focus on that are very, very important and tangible in our daily lives. Why is Kapila Dev giving these very detailed notes in the material manifestation? Does anyone have any thoughts? So if you don't, I have some thoughts, but I was just kind of curious. No. Yes, this is what it's for discussion, it's for thinking out loud. Please.
Well, my guess is that the reason why he's explaining the material nature in detail is because Krishna says, always remember me and never forget me. And so I'm just guessing that that's implying like oh man, I'm trying to think of the actual term. What is it? What is it? Someone knows the logic term. It's like mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive, right? And so like I'm thinking. So my guess is that maybe in order to go back to Godhead, you have to really know both natures, the material nature and the transcendental nature.
That's a really nice answer. Gokulananda Prabhu. That was a great answer.
The right procedure, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, to have darshan of the Lord when we go in front of the deity is to start with his lotus feet and then slowly, steadily, step by step, rise all the above limbs, and the goal is to have the beautiful moon-like darshan of the lotus face of the Lord. So Srimad Bhagavatam explains how the first two cantos are the lotus feet, and the whole goal is to be able to deep dive into the beautiful pastimes of 10th canto. So if you do not understand how God is great, they say God is great, but without understanding the greatness of the God, what makes him so great? So that understanding is given through the first two cantos. And then when step by step we rise in the consciousness and the understanding of the Lord, then actually are we able to appreciate the confidential pastimes of the Lord. Otherwise we'll take them cheaply and there will be surgiasm that will creep in. Surgiasm, people start taking cheaply. Many people in India, especially, they like to directly jump over to the 10th canto and they start imitating the pastimes. That's called surgiasm, taking everything cheaply.
Sahajism, right? Sahaj.
Cheap.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you had some thoughts. Yes, I mean, those are very nice answers. I love hearing from all of you. Yeah, I believe Labila Dave gives these detailed notes. I mean, of course, because Devahuti asks. I kept thinking, wow, Devahuti is so much smarter than me. I would never ask these questions. My brain doesn't go there. My brain, quite frankly, doesn't really care to know. But this knowledge is given so that we can get that transcendental knowledge, which is so we can understand the difference between matter and spirit, what we are, why we are here, who is the controller, and all of those things make us understand the purpose of our existence. And then as Gokulananda Prabhu shared, so that ultimately we can understand the greatness of the Lord. If otherwise, maybe sentimentalism or just ritualistic things will creep in, and we take the Supreme Lord cheaply. I've shared in my other classes, somehow it always comes up, but my background, I grew up Catholic, and actually was a fairly educated Catholic. I mean, I was an educated Catholic. There are many who just go to church on Sunday and that's all they know, but I actually went to Catholic school and I studied the theology and the saints and the different epistles from the popes. So I knew the gospel and the teachings well, but I was... In the Bible, it is said in the Old Testament, which as a Catholic we don't focus so much on Old Testament. We're very much in the New Testament and Jesus and his teachings. But all it said about the creation of the world is that God created the world in 7 days, and on this day he made the fish, and on this day, and then the last day he said, "Let there be light." And then at some point, when you get older, they tell you, well, don't take that literally. it's just a story to explain what might have happened. We know God did it, we just don't know how he did it. And I was kind of like, well, why write it down? But if you don't really know, but it didn't bother me any. However, these kind of topics are not my favorite. They're very hard for my brain, and I'm drawn to other things. But when I came to Krishna consciousness and I read the Bhagavad Gita, I was so blown away. And I would tell people, I still tell people, do you know the answer to everything in life is in this one book? Everything is here. What you're supposed to do, where you come from, how you're supposed to worship, God, all his energies, how he creates things. I very much appreciate that about our faith, about our scriptures, that everything is explained in thorough detail. And that gives me greater faith that that there are the answers are right here in front of us. And that's what it does for me. Although it's not, a topic that I find entirely thrilling, it does deepen my faith that it is so thoroughly explained. And now, I will open it up completely to all of you. If there are any thoughts or questions or points you want to elaborate on. Yes, Drishtajumna Prabhu.
You were talking about how you're appreciating how Devahuti's mind works, and you were saying I wouldn't even ever ask these questions, and I'm not sure if I would even care about them. Yeah. And I was feeling kind of the same way. If I'm scheduled for class, I'm like, please don't let it be on the universal form, and please don't let it be on Sankhya Yoga. Both of them are just so abstract for me to wrap my head around. It's hard for me, but I appreciated this class, and there's an appreciation that you can have for the analytical study of material nature and the relation to the souls and Krishna. And I guess that's just one of the points that Prabhupada's making clear, is that we need this to advance.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a rough topic for me.
Okay, I have a question. Why is it that I can hear about this knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, that I'm not the body, and I can hear about the detailed explanations of the material world, but then after I leave and 5 seconds later I just forget? And I think of the body again.
I'm going to have Gokulananda Prabhu answer that question.
The question is I can hear I'm not the body, and then 5 seconds later, or if I leave the room or go somewhere, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's my hand, or oh yeah, I am hungry, or whatever. You know what I mean?
That's the power of Maya, right? Forgetfulness of Krishna. So I was just thinking, might
Can you
answer your question.
Can you hold the mic right up to your mouth?
Sankhya Yoga, as you mentioned, Srila Prabhupada translates Sankhya Yoga as Bhakti Yoga. Why? Sankhya Yoga basically, literally it means difference, to know the difference between matter and spirit. Okay. So science of self-realization, as explained by Srila Prabhupada, begins with this basic understanding that I am embodied, I am not this body, I am within this body. So I am separate from this body. So when this basic understanding comes, that is the beginning of the self-realization, understanding the real self. The real self is not this dead matter, the body which is made of this material ingredients or elements. I am different from this body. I am spirit soul. And just like there is this material realm, there is spiritual realm, where there is purely everything is chinmay, everything. There is no dead matter whatsoever, right? So, as soon as the living entity falls into this world, the illusory potency of the Lord covers over our real knowledge, And that's why we have this entire process of Krishna consciousness even. So that we keep hearing, so that these thick layers of material illusory potency, which is covering our real consciousness, are removed step by step. Then we can actually, be exposed to the real identity of the self.
Could I share some thoughts? So, as I was hearing, as he said, that's so difficult, and we all feel that it is very, very difficult to realize I am not this body. And I was thinking that, Srila Prabhupada has given, and our acharyas has given such a wonderful process, which is so difficult sometimes we find it to follow. And one of the first principle that we always hear in the class is association. And I have seen it, experienced it every time we are associating outside of the devotee network. Suddenly everything starts changing. And if it is longer, it is really, really taking us down. And so to really, the process is very simple, that I am not this body, right? For that we have to continuously associate with the devotees or the books, and that is why we have those ABCD principles: association, books, chanting, and diet. And every time we change, we are with somebody who's really either Mayavadi philosophy or someone who is atheist or something else, even though we want to help them, but we also kind of go down a little bit in that process. And if we are longer with them, we get influenced. So I realized that as much as we can keep in association with the devotees, and especially take guidance from the senior devotees, we have a higher chance of going up and realize that I am not this body. As he said, embodied, right? That realization will go stronger. That's how I understood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I actually have one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah, please, we have time.
This is actually pertaining to the spiritual world. I was just thinking about this the other day. Because as we all know, my conception is very materialistic. So, but I was just kind of meditating on the desire trees in the material world. In the spiritual world. And somebody told me that it's not just like fruit. Everything that comes out of the desire trees is for the pleasure of Krishna. And so it's, if you wanted a mango for Krishna, there it is. But also, if you need like a 5-wick arati lamp, ghee lamp holder, like whatever paraphernalia you need comes out of the tree too, is what I heard. And then I started thinking about that, and I was like, thinking about like, what if I wanted to offer Krishna like 1,000,000 cows, right? And then so boom, like 1,000,000 cows come out of the tree. But then I was like, how does that work spatially? I'm like, I was like, I know that the universe is ever expanding. Does that mean that Krishna creates a new universe for the 1,000,000 cows that the tree just gave? But I'm pretty sure it's not like that, because of Satchitananda is not material, but I just can't wrap my mind around it. Anyway, I just wanted to throw this out there.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I need to be thinking deeper thoughts.
Trista Jr., you have anything? No?
I was just going to say, I certainly have not mastered the concept of I am not this body. I don't really have anything to offer there, but I can just share that I definitely forget sometimes, and then I remember again that I'm not the controller. I'm a very, my husband can tell you, very regimented person. I get up at the same time, I do the same things at the same time every day, I take the same route to each place that I go to. So I create this bubble for myself that's very comfortable, and I don't ever have to deviate from it. But then when something goes wrong, I very quickly remember, wow, okay, I can't actually control everything. I've kind of tricked myself into thinking that I can. And then as I get older, I see, you know, unfortunately, my parents and people I'm close to, I really see how different they are now than when I was a child. You know, they no longer have the energy to do the things or enjoy the things that we used to do together. And it strikes me of, wow, that's really going to happen to me. This is going to happen to me. I never thought, you know, I'd see them change in that way or get tired so quickly. And lastly, my husband had a very serious health issue a year and a half ago, where his spine just, I want to say gave out. I just say gave out, kind of. You know, he had a trapped nerve, and he went from being fine. I mean, he had some chronic pain issues, but he went from being fine, beautiful, healthy, handsome man, just living his life, walking, standing, cooking, you know, and being in the kirtan, to not being able to roll over. Overnight. Couldn't roll over. Couldn't sit up. And that really changed my perspective of that everything that we have really is temporary, and it can be taken away at any second. And that's what helps, those kinds of moments are what help me remember really who I actually am in some small part. Well, it's time for prasadam on that note. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
That particular field for it makes laughing sound. It doesn't matter whether it's how many years yes.
teachers that are readily available.
Swastika